giving up their wonderful places, come here, crib and crib and crib, but they'll always buy property here. They'll never go back. Never go back.
If I have an accident on the road and if I can't speak Kannada, even if I'm in the right, I'm in the wrong.
By some estimate, 60 to 70% of the residents are outsiders, right? Who are non-currently present.
Their language is a big identity marker. I mean, there's no getting away from it.
More than 22,000 primary schools in Karnataka have been closed down because they're Kannada medium. Poor people also want to send their children to English.
Aspiration.
It's
That's true everywhere.
No, sorry.
Yeah.
I'll tell you. What I'm saying is there's a total disconnect of language culture. It's not that they're against English. Okay. They're against a kind of disrespect.
What's your view, Ravi? How do we make our cultural landscape relevant and current and contemporary and cater to the people who reside here and not just a small, I mean, one part is to celebrate our past
Right.
and nurture it. The second is to also make it relevant to the current generation.
Yeah, so
how do we make that
So
happen?
basically, it needs to be, just like the chef comes with a contemporary twist.
Correct.
It's a similar thing because finally, it's also a marketing challenge. There are traditional audiences which will go for this and they will continue to go for it.
Correct.
I think the challenge before all of us is to create new audiences, to create interest. I think that's where your question basically is going.
Yeah.
And I think it is necessary for all people, particularly the creative artists in the sector, to innovate, to be able to draw in these kind of audiences. There's always been this debate in Carnatic music about staying pure to the whole music versus experimenting. And I think Bangalore is a city where there's a fair amount of experimentation that's happening. Now, the challenge really is also to market it. I'm a believer that one way to market, and which is what we did at BIC, is to make these events free for anybody to attend, even people who can afford it. Therefore, essentially, I'm a great believer that we need to expand audiences, and the ticketing route has a place and definitely needs to be done in many situations, but it needs to coexist with a free to attend model where you can generate new audiences who say, I didn't realize a play would be this good, and next time around will actually pay for a play to go see it because they otherwise never took the trouble of buying and going. But to do that, the elite, and which is Bangalore's ethos and culture, I keep calling it as privately enabled public purpose institutions and spaces. BIC is an example of that, and there are more coming up along those lines. I really think that we need to have more of the philanthropists coming forward to help create spaces which basically can enable artists to showcase their wares. And among all the cities in India, Bangalore has a better chance to make that happen than any other city. So it's really only our imagination that's holding us back. We really need to dare big, and we need to do it in a collaborative manner between people, philanthropists, corporate, government, everybody coming together.
So Ravi, you built Bangalore International Center, right? And clearly it was a philanthropic pursuit, building public space. And it's not been an easy journey, but it's been a fantastic sort of achievement. Do you want to take us through what did it take to build something like this? And if that is a model that could be replicated and build other centers as well?
So it's eminently replicable because at the heart, the government has something called a civic amenity site, whether it's half an acre or 1 acre, you can technically get it if you're a non-profit organization. Something like BIC cost us in all 30 crores to build that space, 50,000 square feet.
30 crore is the land including?
Land was 3 crore lease for 30 years.
Okay.
27 crores was the cost of construction of 50,000 square feet. So 30 crores. And the way we funded it was 21 crores through donors and about 9 crores through members. So we had a membership route. And the very interesting thing of a place like BIC, and that is what Bangalore Spirit really is about, we have 1,100 members who actually get nothing in return. They have just enabled a public space where events happen free of charge. So that's what the membership has
they
enabled.
just came forward to give you the money?
So there are people who are asking, what's in it for me? And my answer always has been that our life is so transactional. Everything is about what do I get in return. Can we carve a very, very, very small part of our lives? And I'm really talking about the well-to-do people here, which they work on a project which is larger than themselves. It is a larger city cause. So, for example, BIC, I keep saying, technically, I mean, the vegetable vendor must come and experience a program there. They may be intimidated by the space. It may be seen as being elitist. But from the institution point of view, everybody is welcome. We do 400 programs a year, and 120 of them are performing arts.
And all of them free?
All of them are free. And the performing arts, the artists get paid. It may not be a significant sum, but we don't ever expect performing artists to perform for free. I'm a great believer that they need to be nurtured. I'm surprised, Prakash has been in theatre. He must help us understand this. As I got closer to running BIC and I saw the theatre groups coming and performing, I said, you have to be mad to do theatre because the economics don't seem to add up. It is pure passion. It is something beyond the normal to be able to go and embrace
Prakash,
this
what
form.
do you think? What
See,
Ravi is saying?
I want to see. Look, I have a completely different take.
On theatre, making money?
No, on his saying on the marketing thing. Okay, I'll give you just two examples because it should be
On the
clear.
marketing of the
Of
venue?
this free versus the other
Okay,
thing.
free versus this is okay.
I'll tell you. They keep shutting down. I know Ravindra Kala. Those days, that was the only theatre. They would keep shutting it down. Okay, so for renovation, there was a lot of money in renovation. They'll keep shutting it down. There's a ladies' lounge at Ravindra Kalakshetra. In the lobby on the left side, there's a ladies' lounge. On the right side, there's a men's lounge. It's really big. It's bigger than this space actually. The lounge. Okay. Prasanna, a very great, I would say India's
Theatre,
greatest modern theatre director. He did Galileo there. He mounted a play and he did it for 100 days. Okay? Some 80 people could sit every day. He ran it for 100 days. What is the meaning of this? I have done a play now, okay, in English. I've translated Parva that I had done in Kannada into English. 9 hours with 4 intervals from 10:30 in the morning till 6:37 in the evening.
You did it in
It
Bombay?
runs.
Yeah, in
Bangalore.
Chaudhaya.
Yeah.
At Chaudhaya, I did 4 shows. And we collected 26 lakhs in ticket sales, box office sales.
Wow.
Okay? People will come. Now the thing is, we're still, because of very big production, we're still about 15 lakhs short of what we had spent because we paid some token amount we paid the actors and crew. If I do another 4 shows, we'll make a profit. Okay? But I will not get Chaudhaya Hall on a weekend till 1.5 years from now. And if I can't get the weekend, I can't do a 9-hour show. Okay? There is no other space I can do it in Bangalore. I want you to think about this because if I rehearse a play, if I take 3 months to translate, 4 months to rehearse it, I get 4 shows. I can't do it again. See, that is the problem.
So we
It's
are
not.
coming
I
back
don't
to
care
the
about market.
problem of no
Interesting.
cultural spaces, right?
I have no problem
Yeah.
with market. I will do theatre every day.
So going back to the space thing, and Ravi, you have made it happen, right? Bangalore International Center
But that's
is
just
a
one
live
example.
That's what.
One successful
What is the
example.
learning? What
So
is
the biggest learning is the
And
following.
how did you raise the funds? So tell us a bit about the secret of you raising funds.
See-
What does it take?
No, partly it got raised on credibility. I mean, you have to have the credibility that you can make that money and deliver at the end of the day. So that's one important thing. I find that if it's a larger public purpose, people see there are 2 kinds of, if people who get, there are some people, and which is what I would call more the Bombay model, that a few people have serious money and they can just go out and spend crores and crores and get done whatever they want to, put their name on this thing is one model. The Bangalore model is a bit different. It is really, even if I take, for example, the Bangalore Lit Fest, which I run, and I raise the money for 12 editions, we have built a community of 120 people who give between 1 lakh to 5 lakhs for the festival. And consequently, a 2 crore festival is feasible with just community participation. So the point really is there is money out there if you seek it with the right purpose, positioning, and ask. And it has to be credible people who are doing it. That's one important. But the more important thing, one of the donors told me, most of the money when they give for such projects, within 2 months of the building opening, they are back with the donor saying, I need money to maintain and run this place. And that donor said, promise me you will never come back to ask for that money. And we have run it for 5 years. We have a surplus. And therefore, the sustainability is something you need to think through. It's all nice saying my purpose is good and, I will somehow make it and people will give charity. You have to be sustainable. You have to have a tired rental model. You charge those who can pay more and you subsidize. So, for example, the BIC model, people who do theatre, they get the same space at 1/4 the price of the full price if the corporate had rented the same space. So you cross subsidize because you live for arts and culture. You got to make sure that they get it at a lower rate. But you got to figure a way to make your money. So therefore, those who can afford to pay, you charge higher. So you need to think about sustainability. And at the end of the day, we have a building that's fully built. At the end of 5 years, we have money in the bank. And every year, we are running a surplus system. So it is possible to do this. And at the same time, we are delivering 400 events free to the public as a BIC event. Then, and coming back to his Ravindra Kalakshetra and the government spaces, the challenge with it is the upkeep is poor. The maintenance is terrible. And the other last uncertain thing is there's always a clause when they give it to you. At any time, if the government needs it for a function, on the day of the program, they can take it back. And we have had experiments right now. For example, Brigade Group has come forward for the Venkatappa Art Gallery. Version 1, the artist had a big problem when Abhishek Podar wanted to do it. Now in round 2, the conditions are very different. They're just spending money to improve the place and leaving it back to the government to run it. I am deeply skeptical of that model, that it will collapse within 1 or 2 years.
I will explain why it will collapse, okay? With one example. The Ravindra Kalakshetra is maintained by Department of Kannada and Culture. Town Hall is maintained by Bangalore Municipal Authority, BBMP. There are so many theatre spaces the government has built and scattered across different departments, and each one of them wants to hire people to maintain it. It's a terrible thing, it won't work like that.
And the budgetary allotments are next to nothing. And the other thing
There's
is...
a lot of money allocated to culture. Did you know this? In Karnataka, the culture budget a couple of years ago was almost the same as the national budget for culture.
Oh my God.
So where does that go? Now that's a very good story for somebody to follow the money. It's a very good story, that one. That much we spend 650 to 700 crores a year on culture. I remember the time when we had only 60 lakhs per annum it used to be.
But this government involvement in cultural spaces, and what I'm gathering from both of you, is a problem. It's not the solution, right?
The trick really is you need a space which is definitely affordable for artists who need that. But that same space is not required for an artist who normally showcases his or her works at Taj West End. But they will also demand that they want it at that rate. The answer, I believe, that while government might be the problem, government has also got to be part of the solution. We really need new frameworks. I am a believer that you need a kind of a quasi-private entity, which is, government owns it, government this thing, but there's a very clear understanding of how the place will be managed and run. There's actually an international example which is brilliant, which is the English heritage. So if you go to England, you have all these heritage properties. In fact, you must read the first line of the government note of English heritage. It says English heritage is part of the government, but it is not a government department. And the front facing of English heritage are people who are lords and peers and corporate people and various other things. But government controls all those estates and properties. Nothing is ever severed. But the experience to the customer, experience to the artist who needs to use the space is absolutely seamless, which is why when you go to London, you'll go see Shakespeare in the park. The guy who's fronting with the theatre guy, his experience is like the Broadway experience, even though that park is a government park. We don't have that model.
So what you guys are talking about is government facility, if that can be better managed, upgraded, etc.
One is upgraded and managed in a manner which, see, whether it's, and I'm not talking about privatization. At the end of the day, the care and concern that the private people have for, or a resident welfare association has for its park, cannot be matched by a government department.
What can we do to build new spaces? What you managed to do with BIC?
There are 2-3 models. One model is where government just is an enabler and the private does it. Not having... So one model, of course, is having government in it. So trying to do Venkatappa Art Gallery or Ravindra Kalakshetra, refresh. We should work on cracking a model where those great spaces can get refurbished and managed in a manner that the experience is good. We should go down that route.
And they're affordable then.
Exactly. Then
And
they are
it's
affordable.
possible.
Responsible and affordable, because there's government will give a cross subsidy from its budget grant, so artists will feel that their taxes and other stuff is basically working for them. That's one model.
Sure.
The second model I would call is where government is enabler. Like, for example, in the case of BIC, we got a civic amenity site. We paid 3 crores for a 30-year lease. Maybe in the renewal it'll be 15 crores, whatever it be. But there's a model by which government earmarks some land, what they call civic amenity sites. Bangalore is one of the few cities that has that great model, which can be given to a deserving kind of non-profit institution.
Is there a minimum land parcel, do you think, that would... That
See,
is required?
Rangashankar is a civic community
Yeah,
site.
civic. We have both
Suchitra
half
is
an
a-
acre. BIC is
half an
civic.
acre.
Suchitra is a civic community site.
So half an acre would be great. 1 acre would be super, absolutely, in terms of thing. That's the second model, which government is an enabler to the thing. The third model is pure private. Now, there the challenge in pure private is that the land costs have become so expensive that unless it's a seriously rich philanthropist or somebody who's come into serious money or has got old ancestral land where you can this thing, or there are places like the RBNMS, etc., where land is being repurposed and these kind of things are happening. I'm involved in trying to build one public space out there in a place like that. These are essentially totally, there is no government role except, of course, giving the permission to build the spaces or refurbish the spaces, which is
Brigade, Jagriti.
which is So Jagriti is an example of that. Indian music experience, where in that large complex they create. Increasingly, builders who are building these large campuses like Golfshire, etc., are open and amenable. So when Prestige did the Forum Mall in Kanakapura, they also built the Prestige Codes Theatre for 1,050 seats. So increasingly, even the real estate developers are realizing that the story has to go beyond that. Arts and culture and spaces for that is an important thing that they need to think about when they do these quasi-townships. That's the township. But the key challenge there, and therefore the location becomes important of where you locate that facility. It'll have to be at the edge of the property. Residential neighborhood townships, they tend to think of themselves as gated communities. So they are often loath to allow the general public to come in, which is why you got to do the design in a manner that this part, though it is part of the larger, the gated community might have an entrance from within the community into that particular thing, but the place is outward facing to the street so that the general, it is doable. In fact, I've recently been speaking to 1 or 2 developers, giving them this idea, saying that the way to make your proposition unique is just imagine if your proposition is, I've got a 400 seat theatre in that gated community, which the community has access to right through the year, it suddenly raises the social, cultural quotient of that space in a way that nobody has attempted before.
Do you think we are at a stage when some of these things are falling in place?
Yes,
where
definitely.
Where people, developers are feeling the need, where government is feeling the pinch. Also, I'm sure...
And there are private initiatives
there are
happening.
private initiatives.
Government is not very happy with culture, but because that's the nature of culture, it is
No, but
probing and
the-
questioning.
When Trevor Noah happened in Bangalore, right? I'm sure everybody in Bangalore felt terrible about it. including the government.
In fact, actually, a friend of mine immediately sent me a WhatsApp during that when that Trevor Noah broke. He said it is now reverberating globally that Bangalore is not a sound city. So he punned with the sound not working and the reverberate word. I thought it was quite funny.
Switching track, I would love to sort of dive into your respective sort of territory and personal trajectories that you guys have had. And how did you end up in Bollywood? And coming from Bangalore, you were born and brought up here, right? How did Bollywood
And an
happen
engineer
to
to
you?
boot.
An engineer to boot, which is not anomaly in this city, right? You throw a stone and you hit a engineer in this city, right?
very likely. Yes. This idea of me being in Bollywood happened because I teach a lot. You know, I do acting courses and I do filmmaking courses, scripting courses, and I have a kind of small following.
So since school, you were doing this acting and things.
See, the house I grew up is called Green Room because my father went to do makeup for my mother when she was still in her 12th. She was acting in a play and boys and girls were not allowed to go on stage together. So she was doing a man's role. My father went to do makeup to put moustache. And she wanted a real thing. And he laughed and said, sometimes it'll grow. She said, I won't marry, it's okay, you put it. And he fell in love with her. He pursued her for 3 years and they got married. The house was called Green Room.
Okay.
I grew up, probably the first words I've heard are lines from a play. They were always rehearsing at home. I come from a theatre family. Everybody in my family is a theatre person. Everybody.
So what happened? How did engineering happen to you then?
Because you can't make money out of theatre. My mother worked in ESI Corporation. My father worked. He was if you had prestige pressure cooker at home, the man holding that cooker was my father. He was the general manager marketing. He started from the floor, and he grew up to become general manager. 78, I joined engineering.
Okay, 78. Okay.
Yeah.
So it was to chase and earn a decent living.
No, it's if you get above 90% in maths, physics, and all that, you're cursed. You have to do engineering.
So that
And
happened.
All
there
of
is
the
no
choice of
other
medicine.
way. There is that. You have to.
So did your parents pressurize you,
No,
or you
no,
yourself
they didn't.
decided that you wanted to be an
Yeah, I
engineer?
wanted to do mechanical engineering. I didn't want to do acting. I
And
wanted
then
to do that.
how
yeah.
did acting happen?
So, but I started with lighting and makeup, and then I began to direct plays. And I began to teach, for lots of people would call me to give lectures. I was a software programmer for about 6 months,
Okay.
I used to do BASIC and COBOL, those days, languages I used to do. I quit all that and I became a journalist with Indian Express for 2 years. And then 2 more years with Sunday. But throughout I kept doing theatre, even when I was doing those things. I would go rehearse early in the morning at 6 a.m. Because I had to have I was a crime reporter for Indian Express.
Was the question of money on your mind? Did your
I
parents
felt-
kind of
No,
question
my
you?
mother, my dad didn't mind, but my mother was bitterly disappointed that I finished engineering with a first class and, I took a job with Indian Express for 560 rupees.
How tough was it for you?
It was
Did
very
you
tough.
have a lot of questions inside you?
No,
Huh? You were clear.
I don't mind poverty.
Huh?
I don't mind being poor.
So it was an easy answer for you.
It was very easy. My best years of my life were those 2 years in Indian Express,
Okay.
But I kept doing theatre throughout. So I've always been teaching, because I'm an amateur theatre person. When somebody says, I want to act in a play, I'll start them on the fringes of the production and sometimes they get to act. So I have a kind of following with young people even now. Like a lot of them come to me for advice.
Okay.
One such boy finished his graduation at Manipal with mass comm and he came, Arjun Chakradhar is his name. He came to Bangalore to meet me because he was a fan of a series I was doing for Doordarshan for ETV called Garva. It was a cult series.
This is when?
2000, 2000,
Huh.
2002. Like
So
that
early
time.
2000. Okay.
And his family were watching it and he was still in high school or something. He was a big fan of that. So when he finished, the first person he came to meet was me to take my advice. He was in a local TV channel. He would keep meeting me for advice. I said, if you want to be a film director, don't be in Bangalore. Go to Mumbai or Chennai or Hyderabad, I said. So he went 2008 to Mumbai. He began to work with Shujit Sarkar. Then he sent two scenes of a movie with the character
Oh,
sketch,
okay.
and and I said, who wrote this? This is stunning. I said, who wrote this in Bombay? I said. Then he said, Juhi Chaturvedi, and this is by Shujit Sarkar,
Which movie was
Madras Cafe.
Madras Cafe.
And he said, sir, I can't convince them. They don't know you. Will you just do an audition and send it? So with my own group, I directed and shot an audition of me playing that role. And the story goes that there were 52 people who had auditioned for it. Mine was the second. And Shujit said, only if you get somebody better than this, call me. Otherwise, I don't want to watch anything else. Then he called me and I acted in that. And now I've done about 85, 90 films. So that's how I was in Bollywood. But I've acted in 6 languages. It's not just, I've done Malayalam cinema, I've done Tamil cinema, I've done Telugu cinema. I've acted in a Marathi film.
And anything
English as well.
Anything that stands out, because Bollywood is what we all get to hear a lot, especially up north.
I always get
but tell me a bit
I
about
always
the
get
reflections.
history-based stories. I'll tell you what I mean. There's a little bit of context to this. There's a coming of age thing that has happened to India from the mid 80s.
Mm-hmm.
We were actually under the anthropological lens of the West, of the Anglo-Saxon West, typically. I know some Catholic West also has done it, but English-speaking West was they've looked at us, through the lens, and they've analyzed how we live, our caste system. Francis Buchanan came here and said, how marriages are done, what happens when a girl, menstruates, and all kinds of stuff. But since the 80s, something happened, around the time India won the World Cup. Indian filmmaking, where near history was not taboo anymore. You could pick up near history subjects and put it to scrutiny yourself. Don't look at a Western view of it. Like even
Which film comes to your
see,
mind?
even Gandhi, for instance, it was not an Indian film, right?
Right.
But see, films after that, and I'll tell you, say Neerja was one of those early films.
Yeah.
That was
For the
like
air
that,
hostess.
about the air hostess, right? So this film, Madras Cafe, was an exploration of what happened in 1991, being just done 20 years later. Very, very close. I will tell you the number of films I've done like that. Madras Cafe.
More contemporary films.
No, near history.
Near
films.
history.
Near history.
Okay, which was never touched before. Okay, Surarai Potru, Captain Gopinath's story. I've done Shakuntala Devi, which
I've
for
seen.
Bangalore person. I've done Accidental Prime Minister. I have done Talwar. I did a film called Youngistaan, which was actually I had to play. I will mention it now. Chidambaram. It was a spoof of Chidambaram I had to do. It was a very political film. It's all about now all the film. I've acted in a film called Mulayam Singh Yadav where I play Raman or Lohia. It never got a release.
And even Airlift, for example.
Airlift was
Was
the
a recent,
Kuwait.
the true incident.
I get called typically for those roles.
So why do you think this near
History,
near
near
history? Why
Because
why?
I think there's a great awakening, in India with a younger generation. They're not afraid of fast bowlers. They will. Throughout his career, J.R. Vishwanath hit 2 sixes throughout. Till his last 2 years, Gavaskar hit only 1 6. 1 sixer, because it was almost like an insult to a bowler to hit a sixer. But today's young people are not like that. They don't care about
They
reputations.
don't have baggage, colonial baggage on
and
their mind.
and Bangalore actually really represents that. That's why Bangalore is not a good place for new cinema, because the Kannada cinema industry, whenever you do this podcast, I'll get so much hate mail, but I'll tell you, they actually say they're protecting the Kannada language culture, because what they say is, we have never allowed dubbing for a long time. They didn't allow dubbing, because we're protecting Kannada culture. This is what they said. But actually, we're protecting a market, not a culture. They know the difference, but they're just bluffing. Now it's out. They released some 270 films last year. I think 6 of them made money. 6 of them broke even. Everything else lost. That it's the pits, because They could have done Shakuntala. Shakuntala Devi used to speak in Kannada. Captain Gopinath comes from Gorur, you know. They could have made a Kannada film. They don't have the gumption, and they don't want to step up and do something relevant and important. Although some young people are beginning to do it now, but it's too little, too late, because to come in a crowd of 270 films who come with inflated budgets and dances and fights, it's very difficult for a good film to survive. So,
But this in contrast to the Tamil film, the Telugu film,
see, Tamil
Malayalam film,
see, I will tell
they are
you.
going through a massive resurgence, right?
No. So look, every year different cultures there. See, when we got something and we are going to lose something because of that, we should be clear. When Potti Sriramulu died and Pandit Nehru made Kurnool the capital and created the Andhra state, and a few months later he merged Telangana and they became the greater Andhra state. When that happened and the linguistic states were formed, Karnataka became nearly 3 times its original size. It was still called Mysore then. From 8 districts, it became 24 districts, It got so much land in. And it came with cultures that had existed with other language cultures for decades, in some cases centuries, In Karnataka, in Bangalore, all these language films get released, even today.
Right.
And these guys facilitated that by stopping, films made in other languages. They stopped the dubbing of those things, and people began to learn other languages. So in Bangalore, an auto driver will speak 5 languages. What happened in Chennai was different. All the film industry was in Madras. Dr. Rajkumar lived in Madras. Vishnuvardhan lived in Madras. All of musicians. Prabhudeva his family is Kannadiga family. They moved there because all the industry was there. Telugu, Malayalam and Kannada was there. When we moved out, in the 80s, by the 80s, a maturity had been reached with Malayalam diaspora. So the market became really big. 99% of people in Kerala speak Malayalam. And there was a diaspora market where the money is bigger.
Mm-hmm.
So they could begin to make better cinema, because the market and the culture merged there. What happened to Tamil was they had studios and they had an industry culture from before. What happened to Telugu was when the separation happened, Madras, which was a Telugu city, Potti Sriramulu wanted Madras to be the capital. They began those people who were very rich, Chettiars and so on in that place, began to grow the industry in coastal Andhra. Hyderabad was the city, they put the studios there, and they owned all the theatres. And the Telugu language, 67% of the people in Karnataka said they speak Kannada in the last census. I think now it will be less than 50, okay?
Absolutely.
So their problems or their advantages were different. Our problems and advantages are different. Actually, we should not mind so many movies coming here, being produced here. We should not mind, actually. We can also survive then. But it's very difficult to talk when people have a siege mentality. They think others have come inside and taken away what we had.
This is the Kannada, anti-Kannada. That's what you're
I'm
talking
a full Kannadiga.
Right.
So, language is a big identity marker. There's no getting away from it.
But tell me something. I was in Bombay just last week, and going to the language, you see the kind of Hindi and variety of Hindi people are speaking. The city does not have that identity crisis. But the question of Kannada, that being the dominant language, is it linked to a certain evolution of cities, right? And Bangalore is at a state, probably, I think Bombay is really India's most cosmopolitan global city in many ways, right? Bangalore is on its journey and probably closest to what would be cosmopolitan the second. This identity around Kannada, is it a city in transition asking those hard questions? And probably somewhere down the road, cities will evolve. All global cities will evolve to subsume those individual identity to become a large global city. Do you see that?
See, the thing as far as Kannada is concerned, what you're seeing, and it is a big identity marker. And what you're seeing on the ground today, in even the latest regulation that signboards and 60% should be, is a sudden backlash. I think also, see, this is a city of migrants in more ways than one. I mean, your book also talks about it. The question is, have those who have come from outside, and it includes, even though I might have come here in 69, I'm an outsider as far as this, how much effort have we made to really assimilate and integrate with the local culture? I really feel that not enough of that has happened from those who have come in from the outside. And you automatically, also in a situation where jobs are scarce, where things are scarce, there is a tendency to go back to what gives you your area of comfort, the area where you feel the locus of control is with you. And language becomes an important thing.
Especially in political
And even on the street. Today, for example, if I have an accident on the road and if I can't speak Kannada, even if I'm in the right, I'm in the wrong. I mean, I don't have a hope in half of surviving that particular incident if you cannot speak the local language. So there's this backlash. The word that you used in transition is an interesting one. Is it that over a period of time, will it get subsumed? I actually hope it does not, honestly speaking. I really think that we should celebrate our entire diversity. And I really think the success of the city will lie in that those to whom it traditionally belonged are welcoming of others, which has normally been the nature. And those who have come from outside assimilate and are sensitive to local culture. They don't need to, we shouldn't have parasitical behavior where this becomes a plug and play city. You plug in, plug out, and just act like a parasite. That's problematic. And neither do I want a homogenization of a global city where everything gets subsumed to this larger Western view of English and those things. That would be tragic also. We really need to find our own golden medium, which basically allows all this to coexist and think. I think that's the essence thing of our city.
So I wasn't meaning subsuming the identity. I meant subsuming or maybe celebrating its past and yet maintaining identity, being accepting of global sort of culture that is coming in, or other languages or other people coming in, which probably right now there is a fault line that is emerging.
Except that you can argue that is that good if you wish to be a global city to think. That's a different argument. So
that's why I don't have an ideological position.
It has its own challenges when you do this, when you also want to be an attractive investment for international money.
Correct.
So it's a contradiction in terms.
Just closing, what I feel is one has to be respectful, one has to nurture one's rich legacy, may it be cultural, may it be linguistic. But I guess in a rapidly changing world, when people are coming from outside, I guess all our global cities have to be some kind of melting pot where it's not subsuming, but all cultural flavors get celebrated, including the roots, strong roots. It should only get enhanced and amplified. So Ravi, you've been in the city, not born and brought up, not born here, but brought up here, right?
Yes.
You came here in the 60s. How has the journey been for you here?
Fascinating. My father in a transferable job came to Bangalore in 1969. And
Where did he work?
He worked with the bank. He came here with Canada Bank, and that was his last job. He retired in 1980, but it was in a transferable job. And though I came in 69, I was in a hostel in Yerkad, then I was in Bits Pilani, Ahmedabad. So I've been outside till about 81. But I could effectively say I've been in Bangalore since 81, once all my studies and the rest. My first job was out here. But I think anybody who's been here from 69 onwards can qualify reasonably as a Bangalorean. And I think I fall in that bracket right now. And just like Prakash had mentioned, I happen to be at Tambram. So Tambram, you don't even have to ask. I had to join an engineering or medicine. There's no choice with the marks. So you just did that and for me, the change really was I joined a firm, which was Myco, which is now Bosch at that point of time, because typically you go and work for a career, etc. But I was very keen to become an entrepreneur, to get onto my own thing. And I remember after about 7 years of working, my father got very exasperated with me, always talking about, I want to do something. but I never got around to doing it. He said, the world, there are only two kinds of people and they're mutually exclusive. There are people who decide to be on their own, and there are people who talk about being on their own. These are two. So you please decide which group do you belong to. And that sort of made up my mind. So I then got into this, feedback consulting and had a career in market research. For me personally, my life changed in 2000 when Nandan asked me to be a member of the Bangalore Agenda Task Force, which S.M. Krishna then had set up. And honestly, I had no idea, except my father-in-law coming from the bureaucracy. I had no clue. I would consider myself as a reasonably apathetic individual, having no knowledge of how government runs, nothing. But that BATF experience...
What was BATF?
So,
many
so-
people won't know.
So Bangalore Agenda Task Force was something that S.M. Krishna had set up about 7 task forces. There was one on education, one on infrastructure. One of them was a Bangalore Agenda Task Force. Subsequently, of course, he had a task force to catch Veerappan also, but that came a bit later down the line. So the Bangalore Agenda Task Force mandate was to ask a few people from outside of government, Nandan and a small team that he put together, to actually come and give a report on how Bangalore can be reimagined and something can be done. But we chose a different route. We said we will collaborate and work with the government departments. We're not going to sit outside and because we had no idea what it took to run a city. We had no idea what it meant to be in government. None of us. Not Nandan, not anyone. Today Nandan is very knowledgeable on this whole area. And subsequently, in fact, the seeds of his whole foundation, if I can call, was his being in the Bangalore Agenda Task Force, where up close and personal, we got to see how the various government
It
departments
must
work.
be a very novel idea, a novel concept. at
Very
that
much.
point
In
of
fact, it
time,
has
Ravi.
never happened ever since. It was very novel. And also the route we took was also quite novel. We said we will not give a report. We said we will work with government departments and we will collaboratively work on projects. So, I was involved in the city's property tax system. But the property tax system was not something, it was worked along with the Bangalore City Corporation to make it a reality. So it was this whole model of working through BATF. It got closed down in 2004 when the government changed. And subsequently, one got involved in the Jawaharlal Nehru National Urban Renewal Mission. Four
And
of
for
us.
you, it was tasting blood, right?
Actually, after BATF, I said, this is the place I want to be in. I used to work advising private sector companies how to make more money. That was my job. Okay, I used to earn a living out of saying basically entry strategies and how you can make more money kind of stuff. But the reality is, moving a millimeter in the public domain gave me personally a lot more satisfaction than all the $1 million advice that I was part of in the private sector. That's when the penny dropped for me. I was fortunate in the sense that we were financially comfortable. We had a stock option plan. My wife had got Hema had got a stock option plan. And that basically made us financially
She was with
comfortable.
Infosys, right?
She used to head HR. I am known as Hema's husband. And because of that stock option plan, one became financially comfortable. So my colleagues started running my business, and I started jumping into this whole public space because it basically made me extremely happy. I'm a self-described patron saint of lost causes, but and I've lost more battles than I've won. But the few that I have won, let's say a property tax system, making Lalbagh sustainable for the next 100 years through water rejuvenation and a whole lot of things, or the TenderSURE project for pedestrians. A few projects that I've won gives you so much of satisfaction that this was well worth it.
What is the biggest high about working with the government and turning around some of
Whatever
these
you
projects?
get as change actually happens on scale. It is not the
Chota
benefit
mota.
of a privileged few So for example, if you take something like the TenderSURE project, when the government accepts an idea that you need footpaths to walk, I can't explain the high. That end message of TenderSURE is the most vulnerable guy on the street is the pedestrian. And we need to build the street knowing who our primary customer is, which is the pedestrian. Now, I'm not saying but if you go back to pre-2008 period, we didn't have that much pedestrian walkways, etc., which some other cities had and all the Western cities have taken for granted. So then you suddenly impact. the maidservant who's coming to your houses, which we take for granted, they're not flying in or something. They're all walking on these footpaths, existent, non-existent. So the high really is that something that you have been a part of. Obviously, it's a collaborative effort. There are many people involved. It's too much to think that you made this change happen. But you are part of that whole process, which impacts people across the spectrum, from the poor to the rich, is something which I can't describe. I mean, that's really basically. But 2000 to 2010, I realized that anything with government, it moves. You know, the glacial warming is happening faster than change in government. So,
Please tell us, enlighten us on the tough part about working with the government.
there's no culture of evidence-based decision making. There is, everything is a short. I mean, they have no time to think about what's the right thing to do. They're either in meetings or they're in the politics of what needs to be done, or these kind of things that spot decisions. Nobody has the time to sit for 3-4 hours, look at all the evidence and says that the evidence points me that this is what I need to do. That's not happening in government.
Going back to what you pointed out, is it politics? And at an earlier conversation, we were talking about unique political construct of Bangalore city, right? Tell us a bit about that. What did you mean by that? This is a politically very, very volatile state in the sense that it has never voted the same party in subsequent elections, right?
When this call for Ekikarana came, which is now more than 100 years old.
Ekikaran, huh?
Ekikaran means making it greater Karnataka.
Right.
The person who died was Potti Sriramulu, but the beneficiary was actually Karnataka.
Mm-hmm.
So when that happened, the people who were agitating for a Kannada state, they all became congressmen. They joined the Karnataka Pradesh Congress Committee at that time to get the attention of Mahatma Gandhi. They wanted him to allow this idea of a linguistic state to happen. 1936 would be the big marker year for this big change to happen. From that time, there is this idea of getting everybody together and finding a language for Karnataka that is not so many dialects that everybody understands. They took it from the 12th century Vachana Sahitya, Basavanna and so on, Anubhava Mantapa Sahitya. They put it all together and created an artificial Kannada language that could be spoken everywhere, which is the Kannada that you get on formal Doordarshan news. I mean, private channels, they say anything, but on Doordarshan, the Kannada you get is that formal Kannada. The Kannada that Rajkumar spoke in cinema is that Kannada. And they deliberately wrote poetry in that kind of meter and with that language. I say this because this inclusion meant for many years we had to live with other language cultures. And I personally feel we should not wish it away, Like Anantmurti would say, Kannada ke tai tana irbeku. Like a mother, she should keep all the sister languages, he would say. That is a very good idea of Bangalore. And that's what dictates Karnataka's politics. Karnataka is very scared to go regional,
Karnataka is very...
There's a kind of common sense in Karnataka that going too regional is not a good idea. Being a part of India is a very big idea in Karnataka. So we are a Dravida language, but we don't even use the word. Have you seen Kannadigas saying Dravida?
So do you
We'll
see a dichotomy then now, or do you see a new sort of strand emerge?
No, this is the truth.
State which is aligned with national politics, national sentiments in many ways, and then there is this regional thing.
It manages it correctly. See, nationally, it will vote for national politics. When it comes to state elections, it will vote differently. It's a very unique thing. It's because of its unique history. We gain territory, we gain languages.
So the point that you are making is going national for a state like this with so many.
It will always be like this. It will never.
Is easier way to align, right?
Yeah.
Okay, get it. Okay, so this is the rapid fire.
I have no idea what's coming. Okay.
Quick questions.
Any hamper at the end of it?
No hamper. So, one live performance on your wish list in the city that you want to see.
Internationally, it would be Taylor Swift.
Yeah, I think so. I will also second Taylor Swift. Would be
Wow,
great.
you've got Swifties here, huh? One thing you propose to make Bangalore culturally vibrant, culturally better. One policy, one decision that you think will make things better for the city.
Actually, it will be just creation of more spaces. The rest of the magic will take care of itself.
I agree. With this, if you create more spaces which are pedestrian only, blocks of the city which are just pedestrians only, the city will revive automatically.
What's playing on your Netflix right now? Or Amazon Prime or whichever OTT it is.
I'm actually right now watching Slow Horses.
What's that about?
It's about these MI5, disgraced agents of the past, and they come together to form a squad. So that it's a long serial, and of course, there I surf a lot with Crown and many other.
What
things.
about you, Prakash?
I never watch OTT.
So what's consuming you these days?
I always look at news. I'm a news junkie. I keep on reading news, and I read plays and research I need for the play to be done.
So talking of Gen Z, one Gen Z slang that comes to your mind. Are you
I'm not. All these
I'm
short
completely
ones,
foxed.
IMHO and stuff like that.
That is too old.
That's too old, eh?
They got new words.
Yeah, there are lots of new lingos, but honestly, even I am not clued in.
Okay? Do you know what OG is?
Yes, original gangster.
You know?
I didn't know.
Okay. So you knew one. Do you know what Riz is? Word of the year last year.
I remember reading about it, but I don't know what it is.
No, I don't
What
know.
about you?
I don't know.
It's charisma.
Charisma.
Yeah,
It's
was
a
there.
Gen Z lingo
It was there in the
of
10
charisma.
new words or something.
Yeah. Your most favorite darshini that you go to. Pick
There's
one.
so many now. I mean, it's not a. Umesh Dosa Point is my current favorite. Was close to BIC.
There's a place called Bangalore Cafe now, in Jayanagar, which is very popular. So I think at the moment, favorite it is.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.